Okay, welcome to All Things Tennis review of the brand new Aero 2026. We're going to look at all the models in the range, looking at the 98 especially for these pro hitters we got behind me. It's a brand new frame this year for 2026, coming out in mid-Feb. You've got a thinner beam, okay, for those real nerds out there. The changes are you've got NF2 tech, so flax fibers in the frame to make it even softer on impact. And when we get some close-ups, you'll see the details. It's a slightly flatter frame here. We'll see how the pros get on with it in terms of their hitting. Is it going to be better than the current Aero? And are we going to get people changing to it? Let's have a look. So, Shawnee boy, we are here. A little close-up of the new Aero 98. It's a bit of a wand, isn't it, this racket?
It is, yeah, it is very nice.
What do we think first impressions then? The new shape, the new look. It's obviously not a paint job, completely different frame. First impressions?
The look, I love the aesthetic. I think the colour's like a little bit more kind of toned down. It's a little bit kind of, it feels a bit more classy. And also the feel of it is like fantastic. You've got this little kind of textured, you know, it's not just flat and kind of glossy. It's a nice kind of textured feel. It feels very kind of, you know, good in the hand when I'm kind of just spinning it around. It's, you know, yeah, feels good.
Now, obviously, I want to get your first impressions on how the racket feels. I don't want to tell you too much about it, but for the viewers at home, obviously, we touched on this throat area is very different, okay? That's the first thing you notice when it's in your hand. It's like, okay, this has been flattened out here in the throat there. Slightly thicker, but obviously the frame itself is a thinner beam frame.
I think straight away from just hitting with it for a few minutes, it definitely feels a little bit softer. I know that was not a problem with the old racket. I think it comes with, you know, such a high performance is a little bit stiffer and it's a little bit kind of, you know, harder to use, but this one definitely feels like it's a little bit softer. I still feel like I'm getting good pop. I still feel like I'm getting good spin, but it's definitely more kind of comfortable to use. That's something that I'm getting straight away from it.
Well, that's your first impressions. Let's put you through your testing with some
it.
pros. Get you moving. How are the calves feeling? They're looking good, but let's see how they go. So these first few minutes of hitting can be really interesting.
Too good, Marsh.
Because it's a different frame, what their reaction's going to be. We've actually got a pro here today that hits with the Aero 98 currently. So Babolat being a technology company, let's going to see if they're making it any better for these players. The Aero 98 was so successful in 2025. For me, it was probably the most popular racket, one that people demoed, wanted to get their hands on. It's a beautiful mix of that typical Aero spin and power you get with Babolat frames, with the thinner frame and the 1620 pattern compared to the 1619. It really allows great players like this to swing out freely on the ball. You can see the shape on their shot, diving back into court. And I've hit with it. I'm a mere mortal compared to these guys on court, but I loved it. I didn't want to give it back to James at Babolat. They gave it to me as a demo. It was so good. Tried to keep hold of it as long as I could. I really think this is going to be the best racket of 2026. Let's see what the pros think of it and their first impressions.
What I'm feeling from this is it's very similar in terms of the performance. I'm getting such a heavy topspin ball out of it. It's really kicking up on the other side. I can see it kind of jump. It's got that really aggressive kind of, you know, kick off the court. And yeah, I don't feel like, you know, it's like massively different in terms of like the power, maybe slight increase in power maybe. But the thing that I'm getting is just the comfort of it. It feels like a lot more kind of, feels way easier on my arm like than the older one. But yeah, feels very nice. So
when we talk about a racket being easier on their arm, people want a magic wand, right?
Yeah.
This is close to a magic wand. In fact, the 2025 one or the 2023 one, that being a little bit stiffer, you can't have stability and ultra comfort. Those two don't normally match up. So you're trying to find that middle ground between stability when you're playing good players and also comfort. When we've tried the previous ones, we talked about string tension. For those viewers at home, this is RPM Blast at 53 pounds, okay, that we're using today. But we tried softer, rounder strings, going down in tension, so that's one thing for viewers to bear in mind. But first thing off the bat, you're saying a little bit more comfortable than this older version. Similar ball shape in terms of spin.
Very similar, yeah.
And they're talking about the reason they did this to the frame in terms of flattening it out is to make it more aerodynamic. So the Aero range was really made for Rafa, right? He was a pure drive boy in, like when he first came out playing Moya, then they almost made a racket for him. You're thinking huge spin. Now, we know you from your massive channel and your millions of followers, right? They know you as a classic player, right? You're English, cucumber sandwiches, hit flat through the ball, and you're quite a traditional player. Does this enhance the way you're playing, as in give you more room for error, or is it something you have to adjust to?
I think it definitely, like coming from like a pro staff, I think this definitely it definitely enhances the way that I play. It gives me more room for error, it gives me more margin because I can hit the ball harder with more spin. So I'm getting the ball to dip more. You know, it gives me so much more kind of, you know, heavy shape on the ball than I'm normally getting, especially off the ground. Yeah, I don't really feel like I'm losing out on much feel. So things like slices and normally rackets like this, like when you start to kind of bring in touch and feel, they kind of like go a bit, you know, it's not their strengths, but I feel like this performs pretty well from, like I say, all areas. And you know what you're saying about the magic wand, I think this is probably, you know, the old one was as close as you were going to get, but I think this is probably slightly closer.
Now, this obviously, the Aero 98 was a racket. I'm not sure if we're allowed to say this, but the Aero 98 was a racket that some pros may or may not have blacked out frames and swapped to. It was that good that you had people from other brands picking up the racket, blacking it out, and giving it a whirl. Now, I think this is a good segue then to talk about, look, you guys are all great players. The 98 is probably going to be the one you pick up. Now, the most popular Aero probably is the Aero 100. The thing that separates it is the thicker beam. And this is much thinner. Obviously 100 square inches versus 98 and a 16-19. Now that's one I grew up with, huge amounts of power, it's pickup and playability, fun to play with. How much harder is this 98 to play with, and does it mean that you have to be an advanced player to use it?
I really don't think that there's, you know, like a big gap in between, you know, the players that use this and the players that pick the 100. I think players that use the 100 maybe want a slight bit more forgiveness maybe, or they want maybe a little bit more power. But I don't think that, you know, if you're coming from the 100 to this, like it's a huge difference or it's like a massive step up. I don't think that they're like, you know, I don't think you have to be an unbelievable player to like pick this up. I think that it's gonna help you out a lot. You know, I think just because it's a 98, people might be like put off with it because it's like a slightly smaller head size, but it you know, the sweet spot is still big, it's still very forgiving, and the performance is, you know, as good, if not probably better than the 100 in my opinion. I guess the one caveat with this, to get the most out of an Aero 98, you've got to have long, fast swings. If you're a player still developing that swing, try and hit with topspin and maybe you're a little bit slower in the swing, or you're finding your depth hard to judge, the Aero 100 is more forgiving. And to generate pace, you see this kind of whip action, the lag in the forehand, works great with this. If you don't have that, maybe the Aero 100, maybe the team at 285. Let's get you towards the net. Let's see how it handles in terms of volleys then. Let's do it.
So in terms of moving forward at the net, now, Aero being the most spin-friendly frame from the baseline, it's definitely one, if you're demoing a frame, you're playing points out the hand, which that's all I do these days, out the hand, first to 10, it's probably right up there, right? When you're moving forward, how does it translate?
Well, I think it's definitely, you know, the strengths are from the baseline, but I think that, you know, if you're a player that likes to move forward, you're confident in the net, this definitely helps you out. I mean, you just saw on the volleys I was hitting there, like, I'm getting pretty consistent depth and feel, and it doesn't feel like I'm, you know, just pinging the ball long. It feels like I'm able to be very precise pretty much straight away. I think that obviously, you know, it's definitely more comfortable at the baseline, there's heavy topspin, that sort of thing, but I don't really feel like you lose out much from the net. I feel like you still get like a really good performance, really good feel out of it, you know, when you're coming forward. It's very similar also to the slice. Like when I was slicing and moving forward, like I feel like I'm able to really like control it, get it to bite on the other side, and it's very similar for the volleys as well.
Okay, so I always think the Pure Drive goes down as one of the best volleying rackets. Like, it's out there, used so
Pure
much
Drive,
in the doubles.
Yeah.
And the Pure Drive is a more powerful frame. I guess you have to do less with your volleys.
Yeah.
In terms of a racket like this, are you finding you're having to put more on the ball, or you're using spin a bit more? What are the differences on the 98?
Not at all. To be honest, I actually have to do less.
Yeah.
I'm literally just almost holding the racket out and letting the ball bounce off the racket. Because I think that there's like a few ways of looking at control. There's like control through not having a lot of power, and then there's actually control by, you know, you're able to stay smoother through the shot because you know that you're getting the power from the racket, if that makes sense, for free almost. So I think that's the way of like looking at the control element of this when it comes to the net. It's like actually you just don't really have to do anything. You just almost stick the racket out and it just almost bounces off.
Interestingly, just going back to volleys, one of the players we work with in terms of Liam Hignett, he's a really good doubles player, right? He's got a good ranking in terms of British ranking and ATP in doubles, and he moved to this frame, and his kind of rationale was more on the serve, more on the forehands, big maximizer of weapons, and then easy enough on the volleys to get the point finish, putting away volleys rather than trying to craftily do everything, because you feel like the modern game, if you're not putting the first volley away, at least putting it in a really good area, you're pretty much just meat there for the taking, aren't you?
I know. I definitely see a lot of players doing this. Like especially some players who, you would typically think would play with a more control racket. A lot of players are switching to this type of frame because they get so much for free. Like it makes their weaknesses almost like slightly better, and then for their strengths, so let's say if you come forward and you volley well, it's not going to take anything away from your volleys. You're still going to have good feel, and you're still going to get a lot out of the racket.
That's
the kind of gain in performance that you have is ridiculous.
Another player, Luke Sinkus, you played with before, he's gone from 1820 blades to something like this. He uses the Aero 98 currently, and you're like, it gives you so much, that kind of aerodynamic shape and the spin on the ball you're going. You can go after the point. And slowing courts, people talking about balls, people want more easy put away ability, don't they? Normally when people talk about putting ball speed up or racket head speed up, they associate it with more risk. With this racket, it's actually like safer to go after it. You know what I mean? It's like you actually get more safety out of your shot by really committing to it and going for it. I think that's the thing with, like, people think that they get more control out of like a blade, for example, 1820. But you can't get as much spin. So when you're hitting more power, you can't get like the dip on the ball. And with this, you get that huge dip. Like sometimes I'm thinking I'm hitting the ball like 3 or 4 feet long, and then it just goes boom, and it just dips at the last second. Off the top of the frame. Let's get you playing some points. Few serves. That's the big test, isn't it, with the racket? The
serving is big.
Can you translate looking good on camera, hitting a few winners from the baseline and knocking off a few volleys? Can you then translate it to point play?
Let's give it a go.
After you. Serves looking good. Interestingly, the points, you are putting that a bit more shape on the ball, like than you would do with a 97 striker or pro staff or something. How does that feel? Obviously you're on clay, so you're naturally going to revert to more shape, but did you feel comfortable playing points?
Yeah, I think it took me a little minute to get used to serving with it. I think that's a big thing whenever you're like switching to a new racket or you're trying out a new racket. I think the serving is probably the most important thing. And like obviously I had quite a few warm-ups, but once I got into it, I feel like it's actually very easy to hit spots with it. It's the same thing as the volleying. Like you get the power for free, so you just kind of like, I'm almost just like throwing it up and like tapping it almost, and it just goes. What would be interesting then, if we're talking about holding back a little bit or slowing down, let's try a few more points and let's try and control the ball through more and see how you get on. Like actually go for it,
go
like
for
really
it. And let's see
off.
if you can, that translation from the baseline, that whip going for more of the ball and controlling the spin. If you go for 10% more RPMs, are we able to control it through a heavier ball? Let's see.
Let's do it. I think.
Can you trust the racket to do what you want it to do?
I think I'm going to go down the tee on the first one, really kick it, get it to jump, use the spin, and then on the next one I'm going to look for a forehand and just absolutely annihilate it.
That sounds perfect. I mean, there's so much margin for error.
It's a joke, yeah. I thought I hit the first one. The first one literally felt like it was going that far long, but it actually went like that far inside the court. So, and I'm not hitting it like that one with loads of shape. That was probably one of the shots where I've not hit it with as much spin, but it's still like dipping even when I flatten it out. So, yeah, it's mad.
Okay, game point. What are we doing?
Going heavy kicker to his backhand. Get him up here, and then I'm gonna look for a forehand into the inside in.
Huge. Can't say fairer than that. Pretty good. Now, I want you to do some S&V.
Okay.
Can you play the British way in Portugal with the aero? Let's do it. Come on.
Let's give it a go. It'll do. It'll do.
Yeah. To conclude, I guess, looked good on points there. Obviously, being up front when it's changing rackets, you know, the reason you use the racket you use now is because you play with it for donkey's years.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not that old, but quite a long time, right?
I'm getting on.
Yeah. But when you're going to a match scenario with the racket, that's what's so important, because the idea of this honeymoon effect with the racket, this has got to be that's definitely up there in terms of the one you pick up, you're like, oh my God, why am I not playing with this? But how does it translate to when you're playing points? Interestingly, when you're going for that bit more, looks like you've got that margin for error in the shape and to go after the ball. Because you're never going to want to play a match holding back, right? Surely.
Yeah, it definitely feels like I've got the confidence to let things go. Like, it doesn't ever feel like, unless I'm like really on the stretch, it doesn't ever feel like I'm out of control of the ball, which it gives you so much more confidence then, like, be able to go after it. And that's what I'm feeling in the points, is just like, as long as I get, like, you know, up the back of it and get a little bit of spin, I can hit it pretty much as hard as I want, and it'll just dip in. Yeah,
so when we see clips of you in a British tournament, obviously there's some element of highlight real nature there, where you're hitting winner after winner after winner after winner.
That's just my game.
And then we're watching UTR when you're fighting for your life, making balls.
Yeah.
How would this racket translate to both those scenarios?
I think pretty well. I think that, you know, if you're, like I said before about suiting different game styles, different surfaces, if you're a grinder, if you're an aggressive baseline, a counter puncher, I just think this racket can fit all of those. Whereas, you know, you take something like my Pro Staff, that's literally like, you know, kind of, you're not really an all-court player using that, you know, you're probably coming forward a little bit more, coming to the net a little bit more, maybe serve volleying. Whereas this, you can play so many different styles. And I was actually thinking that, you know, recently I've been playing a lot on the clay. This would be an absolute weapon on the clay.
Demon on the clay.
Yeah, it'd be a joke. And I played a few guys actually that do use the aero, and the ball was getting up like so high. Even when I was ripping it as hard as I could, I just couldn't get anywhere near that.
Would you say a similar level to Sean, kind of being around top 1,000 in the world sort of thing?
I'd say similar level, maybe a bit older, but definitely can keep mine.
Yeah, nice.
Like that.
And you're currently using the 98.
Yeah.
You've used the 100 before previously.
That's right.
What I'd love to get you to do is hit with both. I'm not going to tell you much about how they're different. I just want your honest feedback in terms of what it's doing to your ball and what sort of benefits or weaknesses you're finding in either frame. Let's start you off with the 100. So what's really interesting, I've watched Marshall for quite a while today. When he's got the 100 in his hand, what we're finding is there's a little bit of a higher trajectory off the strings, and you're seeing that in his ball. He's playing with more room, more margin for error over the net. Lots of pace on the ball. It's one thing that Aero does really well, brings in that power and spin. What's going to be interesting as well is you can see he's a classy one-hander. Normally with one-handers, traditionally we're thinking about thinner beam, smaller head size rackets. You think of maybe someone like Gasquet that broke the mold there, where you play with a bigger frame, but what will be really interesting to see what his first impressions are of the frame. So Marshall, racket you've used before, you're looking quite dialed in with it. What's interesting is single-handers obviously aren't dead. We've got 2 single-handers here today, probably only 2 left in the UK, I'd say. But how are you dealing with it in terms of, it gives you a lot of power, a lot of spin. Are you feeling dialed into it? Is it controlled? How is it compared to the one you used before?
Yeah, I actually really like it. It's probably, I've used the older one before, so I get a similar feeling, because I've obviously played with it before, so it's a similar feeling. Like good snap on the racket, it's got quite a good snap.
Immediately you've got that bit more margin for error over the net. You look like you're playing with a bit more shape. The racket's obviously doing more for you. So what I mean by that is the racket's slightly more powerful. You're maybe hitting a more controlled swing. You're not having to absolutely wrench at the ball. What is it like as a single-hander with a 100 square inch versus the 98?
It's different. I feel I can maybe get a bit more snap on the ball, so I can accelerate maybe a bit better. Also the sweet spot's a bit bigger, so if I slightly get it off timing, I can still hit a half good shot.
So you were using the 100 full time. You've recently gone to a 98. What was the thinking behind that change?
It was to get a bit more feel, a bit more position on the shots. So I could have a bit more variation in my game and get awarded if I hit the ball bang in the centre. You get more of a cleaner strike.
Yeah, sure. So the 100, I think, like, it's been such a revolutionary racket, and the people, I feel like other brands have tried to copy it in terms of the aerodynamic shape in the frame, huge amounts of spin. They made the racket for Rafa. So when he first came out, like Pure Drive came out in 1994, obviously Rafa coming out shortly after that. When he broke through and beat Moya, he was using a Pure Drive. Then they had him, and they're like, right, this guy's painting with huge shape, massive margin for error, huge power. The error is literally, I can't think of a racket more synonymous with a player than an Aero and Rafa, right? And then 98 these days, look at the difference. It's a completely different frame in the sense of the thin beam, okay? The 100's got that thicker profile. It's going to give you more easy power. The 98 plays very differently. More control. 16-20 in the Aero 98, so you've got a lower ball trajectory with that extra cross. What I'd love to do is get you to play with the 98 for a bit.
Sure.
Let's see if we can see any difference in your shape of shot. Are you going for a different type of tennis with that? Now the 100.
100, cool.
So let's see, when you're playing points, obviously that with the 98, now with the 100, see how you deal with each of the points. So we talked a lot about the 98 and the 100. The 100 actually, under pressure points, you're looking like you're able to hit your spot still. The extra power is not sacrificing control during those points. So different shots, obviously single-hander, which one are you preferring, the 98 or the 100?
So I'm preferring slightly maybe the 98 for the single-hander.
Yeah, and then the forehand?
Forehand, I think this one, get a bit more power, a bit more accelerate. I can really rip the ball.
Yeah, like a maximizer of the weapon. Okay, definitely. Cool. Let's get you serving as well, seeing how you're doing. So guys, look at the pace they're hitting the ball. We're putting them into that match level tempo, really going for their shots. This is how you get the most genuine review out of these guys, seeing what they like in terms of the racket, when they're put under pace, pressure, movement, you know, having to control the ball in difficult situations. You only really get this with all things tennis. The other ones are too corporate, too camera, okay? If you want a proper review, You need proper players. You don't want to watch me playing. You want pros telling you why the racket is so good for which reasons.